Hey everyone, Josh here, and as usual, I am really excited. But today is special because we have ourselves our first guest. We're going to look at shoulder impingement and its rehabilitation. As it stands, roughly 25% of people suffer from some form of shoulder pain, and it's usually due to one of three things: a rotator cuff strain, labral tear, or some form of impingement. Today, we're going to focus specifically on shoulder impingement. We're going to go over the anatomy as well as cover the special test to rule in shoulder impingement, as well as discuss the proper procedure for successful rehab. Thankfully, to help us, we have ourselves a doctor of physical therapy. Not only is she brilliant and beautiful, but most importantly, she's my wife. So let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. Let's give a warm welcome to my wife, Jessica Davis. So thanks, babe, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay, so like we said before, we're starting off with shoulder impingement. So Jess, when it comes to shoulder impingement, what structures are involved, or bones?
So when it comes to shoulder impingement, it all involves the shoulder. So part of the shoulder is made up by the clavicle, or your collarbone, which meets your scapula, which is on the posterior aspect of your shoulder, and then your humerus, which isn't being funny, it's just your arm bone. So those are the three main bones that form the shoulder, and it is the most unstable joint in the body. As you can tell, a lot of this is just ligament tissue.
So moving right along, we know the bones involved. What about the muscles?
So with impingement or shoulder impingement, there are three structures that actually get pinched or impinged between the humerus and the acromion process. So the acromion process is the top of your scapula bone. It comes over the top, as you can tell, and meets
right up
through here.
Okay.
And then your humerus is right under it and kind of hovers right below. As you can see, it goes right into this capsule here. So there are three structures that get pinched between the humerus and the acromion process. And that is your bicep tendon, so the long head of your bicep, which runs through there and attaches into the labrum. Your supraspinatus, which is one of your rotator cuff muscles, goes down through here and under the acromion attaches to the humerus. And then there's also a bursa, or a fluid-filled sac, that helps protect those two tendons. And those three things are what get impinged.
So now that we know the bones and the muscles, or the structures that are involved in impingement, what does impingement feel like to the average person? Or I guess what would their shoulder, what motions would they do to be like, oh, maybe that's impingement?
So with shoulder impingement, it's typically just a painful arc, either raising forward into flexion, out to the side, abduction. Those would all be painful, going up, coming down. And any kind of like tendonitis or just irritation with repetitive motions.
Are there tests that you can do to find out if your shoulder is impinged opposed to maybe some other injury?
Yeah, so shoulder impingement, there are a few more specific tests that you can do to rule in shoulder impingement, and then there's other tests for labral tear or rotator cuff.
Oh, okay. Would you mind showing us what some of those tests might be?
Yeah, we can do some of those.
So do you need me to stand up, sit down?
So typically we do them in standing unless the patient can't stand. Shoulder impingement is kind of general, but there are a few tests that we can do to rule in shoulder impingement. The first thing is just painful arc, painful motion. So if you're lifting flexion forward all the way and that causes pain, or abduction out to the side and that increases pain, we know that that's possibly a factor. So a good test I like to do is Neers Impingement test. And that is taking the patient's arm, fully internally rotating, and you can see you're kind of locking structures at the top. And then you're gonna bring it up and out to the side, abduct, give a little overpressure at the top. Now, if that recreates the same symptoms they've been having, that is a positive test for Neers Impingement.
So we have the Neers Impingement test. Is there another one?
So the other one I like to do is Hawkins Kennedy. It's pretty uncomfortable in general, but if it recreates your symptoms, then you know it's a positive test. So that one, you bring the arm in front, bend there, and then apply pressure to the elbow, kind of crank on the arm there. Again, you'll feel that same similar pain through here if it's a positive test.
Awesome. Are those the two main ones that you guys use in physical therapy? Are there other ones?
Those are the main ones we use for impingement. All the other tests are more rotator cuff or labral tear involvement.
So now that we know the test that you use, we'll go ahead and move on to talk about what actually causes shoulder impingement.
So there are multiple things that can cause shoulder impingement. We'll just
Okay.
cover a few. The first thing I usually see or focus on is horrible posture. That's when people come in with really bad posture, forward head, rounded shoulders,
Kind of looking
like that. So in that position, try to raise your hand overhead.
Yeah,
Can't
it
go
just,
very
it just
far.
stops right there.
Yeah. So if you open the chest, squeeze the shoulder blades, now try to lift overhead,
Yep, nice
more
and
range of
easy.
motion.
Yeah.
Another thing is a lot of repetitive motions, or especially overhead or across the body.
Okay.
People who are painting a lot, or if you have a painting project at home, that will irritate it.
Okay.
Or lifting overhead, lots of things over and over, lifting boxes, that can also cause shoulder impingement and tendonitis.
So what you're saying is don't do 100 OHPs every day.
Yeah, that wouldn't be great. Also, another thing is genetically, some people have a hooked acromion process.
Okay.
So that means instead of it being flat over the humerus, it's hooked more, and that can cause more impingement.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I mean, now that we know what causes impingement, what are the exercises that we can do to help alleviate the pain or fix it?
So there are a lot of exercises that you can do for general rotator cuff strengthening to prevent shoulder impingement. These, we'll go over a few just kind of basic exercises that you can try at home.
Okay.
If those don't work and you still have shoulder pain, there could possibly be something more going on. And at that point, I'd say go to the doctor, get imaging, and see what's going on. But we
Okay.
can go over a few basic things. So the first thing I covered was bad posture. So when people have that forward head, rounded shoulders, first thing we're going to do is stretch the front and strengthen the back.
Okay.
So I usually have people start with just a shoulder or scapular retraction and depression, making
Right.
sure they know how to actually squeeze their shoulder blades accurately and not get their upper traps involved and
Yeah.
no shrugging, because nobody needs tighter upper traps. So with that, you can move on and add strengthening to that, which is
Okay.
more of the rows. You can add T's to get the middle traps a little bit stronger. That all helps with the back muscles.
Okay.
For the front, because you're so tight in here, the pec minor is usually a culprit
Yeah.
for pulling the shoulders in, just
Okay.
because where it's attached. So you want to use a door frame, because everyone has a door frame in any building that you go in or out of. So you want to use a door frame to do some stretching. It's been proven that 30-second holds about 4 times actually helps lengthen the tissue.
Okay. What about the rotator cuff? Because I know that's important.
Yeah, so with the rotator cuff, you have the supraspinatus, which is actually one of them that actually gets impinged.
Okay.
You have the infraspinatus, the teres minor, and the subscapularis. So they call the sits muscles.
Yep.
Now, you use the its muscles to help strengthen and support the humerus.
Okay.
And help keep from having impingement.
Okay.
So with that, you only have 2 little tiny muscles that do external rotation, your
Okay.
infraspinatus and your teres minor. A lot of people at the gym, they hit their lats, they hit their pecs, all these big internal rotator muscles, so you've got to balance that out with hitting some external rotation. So I'll show you some external rotation exercises you can do.
So you had mentioned before that sometimes people genetically have a hooked acromion.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to get around that, or if they just genetically have impingement?
So the best thing to do is to work on your posture and work on getting the rotator cuff muscles strong to help prevent any kind of surgery. But if you get to that point where it's impinged too much or it's rubbing, it could actually tear tendons. And that's when you need to go seek out a doctor and
Okay.
possibly have surgery.
Okay. So now that we've talked about all the exercises that we can do, we're gonna go and break down each one so you can see what it's gonna look like.
So I mentioned scapular squeezes or proper scapular squeezes. So with that, when people have that forward shoulder hunched over, we can work on correcting that by stand up nice and tall for me. Try to pinch my fingers back here. So if they squeeze and come more downward, make sure they're not elevating here. Show them, yep, that's upper trap. We don't need any more tightness there. Squeeze down and back. That's a good retraction. So I usually have people hold that about 5 seconds and then relax, just kind of on and off. Do about 2 sets of 10 or so, just to kind of turn those muscles on, learn what that feels like. And as you can see through the front of the chest, that opens up the chest, kind of stretches through the front. Okay, so once you get proper scap squeezes down, you can add resistance and do rows. So you can use a resistance band at home. You can get those at Walmart, anywhere really. So with this, you can lock it around a door frame, shut the door, and have resistance, but you're going to do that same scapular retraction and depression that we just worked on, just adding resistance. Again, about 3 sets of 10, hold good 2-3 seconds, see how it stretches through across the front, and then we can do from the back, see what his back muscles are doing. Looks good. There's no upper trap movement. Go ahead and show them what a bad row would be, upper trap. There you go. That's not pretty. We don't want that. And then good scap squeeze and down. Good. So another really good exercise for the back or to help with posture are T's. You can just use a band and open up as a T right in front of the chest. I'll have Josh demonstrate. You can see, again, stretches kind of through the front is working the back muscles. Go ahead and turn so they can see what that looks like from the back. Again, squeezing those shoulder blades together, not elevating the shoulders. Nice, good pinch. So I talked about the rotator cuff muscles or the sits muscles and how important the external rotator cuff muscles are. So the two are infraspinatus and teres minor. When you have good support from your rotator cuff muscles, it helps with the stability of the shoulder when you elevate the arm. When you elevate the arm, your humerus has to have room to elevate and go up. If you don't have the rotator cuff muscles kind of guiding it down, you will pinch and get that impingement on the top. So with the rotator cuff muscles, it kind of depresses and allows that movement from the humerus and the acromion process on top. So to do a good exercise for that is double ER, or double external rotation. Also call it confused hitchhiker because you don't know which way you're going, or no money because you have no money. So shoulder blades back, good posture, and then you're going to go out from the midline and back in. A lot of people like to try to straighten their elbows and go out like this. That is not what we're going for. Keep those elbows straight. Pinch those shoulder blades. So now turn kind of from the back, see what's going on there. Good. Try to keep your arm in midline here and not allow it to drift away from the body. And you can usually feel that kind of coming from that shoulder blade through here. Oh yeah. So I talked about the pec stretch and the door frame. This one's great. You can do both sides at once. I'm all about that. So kind of that field goal position, place both hands, arms against the door frame. It helps if you stick one foot forward just a little bit and then gently lean into that stretch. Now with stretch, I don't want pain. I want just a nice static stretch. A lot of people like to crane their neck forward or do something funky. Keep that chin tucked, just kind of gently relax the neck there. With this, holding 30 seconds, do about 4 times. You can switch your feet after 2 just to kind of get a little more stretch on the other side. That's it.
Well, babe, thanks for joining us. You've been really helpful.
Thanks for having me.
If you guys found the video helpful or have any questions, please leave a comment below. We both hope you have a joy-filled, blessed week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. One more time.
Okay.
All right. Well, babe, thanks for joining us. You've been really helpful.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem.
I'm a problem?
Yeah. Yep. That's why I stopped when I said that. I was like, that was the wrong thing to say.